It's 4 o'clock in the morning, June 22, 1941,
Hmm.
and you're sleeping, or you're trying to sleep, in this humid apartment in Philadelphia. The air is just sticky, that awful early summer heat where the sheets stick to you and the fan isn't helping.
It's just pushing hot air around.
Exactly. And then the silence just breaks. And it's not thunder, it's this mechanical wail, sirens rising and falling right across the city.
That sound is so important. It's a psychological break. It draws this hard line between the tense, fragile peace the world had the day before and the complete collapse that's about to follow.
It's the sound of the world ending.
It is, even if the people hearing it don't quite realize it yet.
So we're starting right there, in that moment, in the bedroom of Congresswoman Flora Blackford. The sources for this deep dive, they actually place us right inside her head. She wakes up, and her first thought is just confusion. She thinks, is this a drill?
Which is what anyone would think. Your mind just rejects the catastrophe.
But the logic doesn't hold. I mean, you don't run drills at 4 in the morning on a Sunday.
No. We see this all the time in historical accounts of surprise attacks. There's this lag time between the event and your brain actually accepting it. You want the world to make sense, and bombs falling on a quiet Sunday morning. That just doesn't make sense.
For Flora, though, that denial, it only lasts a few seconds.
Because the anti-aircraft guns start fire.
Yes, the defense ring around Philadelphia opens up, the whole floor starts to shake, and that's it. Denial is just gone.
And what's fascinating about her reaction, it's not fear, not at first.
No, it bypasses fear and goes straight to this political outrage. She scrambled to put on her housecoat, one arm in, one arm out, and she's screaming, that bastard, he didn't even declare war.
She's talking about Jake Featherston, of course, president of the CSA.
Of course.
And that outrage, that's really the central theme of this whole conflict. The lack of a declaration, it's not just a breach of, diplomatic etiquette. It is the Confederate strategy.
A surprise attack.
Absolutely. They didn't want negotiations or mobilization. They wanted high explosives raining down on sleeping American cities before the politicians in Washington had any idea what was going on.
And the physical reality of that strategy is immediate. A blast wave hits Flora's apartment building. The windows just blow inward.
The source material is so vivid here. It describes glass shredding the plaster, covering the beds, a storm of razor-sharp debris.
She barely manages to drag her son Joshua out of bed and into the basement. If they'd been just 10 seconds slower, they would have been cut to ribbons.
That image of the shattered glass, it's so powerful. It signifies the end of any concept of civilian safety. In the Great War, the last war, there was a front line. There were trenches.
A defined battlefield.
Right. And here, within minutes, the front line is a congresswoman's bedroom in Philadelphia.
So Flora and Joshua, they end up in the basement, just huddled in the dark with their neighbors. People are lighting cigarettes, shaking. The building is vibrating like it's in an earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
And in all that dust and terror, Flora has this one stark, chilling thought. The war is here.
It's no longer a threat. It's the new reality.
Which brings us to the mission for this deep dive. We're unpacking settling accounts, return engagement. We've got a massive stack of sources here that document a North America just completely torn apart. We're going to analyze exactly how the CSA caught the United States sleeping, both literally and, well, metaphorically.
And we have to look at the brutal new technologies, the things that completely change the physics of the battlefield. We're talking about the barrels and the mules.
We also have to get into the machinery behind the violence. So we'll be dissecting the ideology of the Freedom Party, the intelligence games being played in the shadows, and the much darker industrial-scale horror that's unfolding in the Confederate concentration camps.
It's a heavy slate, I know. But understanding these mechanisms is, I think, the only way to really grasp how quickly the rules of so-called civilized society can just disintegrate when the shooting starts.
So let's start with the immediate political fallout. Flora Blackford survives the night. She somehow makes her way through a city that's just covered in glass and smoke to get to the Capitol. And there we see President Al Smith addressing Congress.
He's such a tragic figure here. Al Smith, his whole reputation was built on being the happy warrior. He's the first socialist president, a man who believed in negotiation and plebiscites. He spent his career trying to avoid this exact moment.
The sources say when he walks to the podium, he just looks like a broken man.
He's physically shaking. His hands are trembling as he holds his speech. He looks like he's aged 10 years in a single night.
And his message to Congress is essentially, I did everything I could.
And he did. His words are, they're haunting. He says Featherston would not have it. And that's the crux of the failure, isn't it? You can't negotiate with someone whose entire political platform is built on revenge.
Smith realizes, far too late, that Featherston was never operating in good faith. The diplomacy was just a smokescreen.
A way to buy time for the CSA to reload.
It's the classic tragedy of a peacetime leader who's suddenly forced to be a wartime leader. He just isn't built for it. He asks for a declaration of war, but it's just paperwork at that point. The bombs have already fallen.
And while Washington is dealing with the political shock, the situation on the ground is just absolute chaos.
Which is where we need to talk about Armstrong Grimes.
The raw recruit, yes, at Camp Custer, Ohio. His narrative is crucial because it shows the clash between the romantic idea of war and the dirty, muddy reality.
Grimes is young. He's thinking this is some grand adventure. He thinks he's going to march south, shoot Confederates like ducks in a gallery, win a few medals, come home, get the girl.
He has this very 19th century view of what glory looks like.
And instead, he wakes up to sirens and a sergeant screaming at him to dive into a muddy trench. He doesn't even have a rifle.
That's how unprepared the U.S. military was. Their recruits are lying in the mud, completely unarmed, while Confederate bombers are tearing their barracks to pieces. He's not fighting, he's just trying to exist.
And there's this one detail in the text that just destroys his innocence in an instant. A bomb hits nearby, and Grimes finds himself holding something.
It's a hand. A severed human hand.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the instant obliteration of the fantasy. He goes from dreaming of heroism to holding the grisly biological reality of death in, a matter of seconds. It hardens him. You can see the psychological shift happen right there.
It does, because later, a Confederate bomber gets shot down near them. The pilot bails out.
And this scene is just brutal.
It is. The pilot walks up to the U.S. troops. His hands are raised. He's playing that role of the, chivalrous airman. He says something like, "Reckon y'all got me."
He expects to be taken prisoner, given a cigarette, treated according to the Geneva Convention, all the old rules.
And Grimes and the other recruits, they just beat him to death.
They stomp him into what the text calls a broken doll.
It's shocking. But it's also a barometer for the anger on the ground. These guys were bombed in their sleep. The Confederates attacked without any warning. So the old rules of honorable combat, they died at 4 a.m. that morning.
And Grimes realizes the corporal in charge isn't going to punish them. He just tells them to hide the bodies so there's no paperwork. It shows you how fast moral norms can just evaporate when you feel like you've been sucker punched.
So the ground war is ugly from minute one. But to really understand why the U.S. is losing so badly, we have to look at the air war. And for that, we have the perspective of Major Jonathan Moss, a U.S. fighter pilot.
And Moss gives us the bird's eye view of the disaster. He identifies what we would call blitzkrieg, even though the characters don't use that word.
Right. The U.S. was expecting a replay of the Great War. Static trench lines, slow movement, artillery duels.
But the CSA brought speed. Moss looks down from his cockpit and he sees barrels. That's the term they use for tanks. Moving in coordination with trucks, with infantry, at just incredible speeds.
And the mules. We have to talk about the mules.
The Confederate dive bombers. These are terrifying weapons, pure psychological warfare. They have these wind-driven sirens attached to their landing gear, so when they go into a steep dive to drop their bombs, they just scream.
The sound is designed to freeze you with fear before the bomb even hits.
Exactly. And Moss is up there in his fighter, but he can see the U.S. lines just collapsing. The Confederates aren't just hitting the front line. They're driving deep, bypassing strong points, creating chaos in the rear. It's a completely different way of fighting a war.
That tactical disparity, it's even clear when we look at Colonel Irving Morrell. He's a U.S. barrel commander, and he seems to be the only one who really gets what's happening.
He is so frustrated. He calls the U.S. anti-tank guns fly swatters. He's trying to engage these heavy Confederate barrels, and his rounds are just bouncing off the armor.
He sees the writing on the wall.
Morrell represents the modernized soldier trapped inside an obsolete army. He gets the CSA strategy. Punch a hole with armor, flood it with infantry, and just keep moving. He's trying to fight a mobile defense, but he's outnumbered and he's outgunned.
The U.S. doctrine is static. The CSA doctrine is fluid.
And then, as if that weren't enough, the CSA escalates things even further.
The gas shells.
Yes. In Ohio, Morrell's unit gets hit with chemical weapons.
And you have to remember the context here. It's July. In Ohio, it's hot.
Exactly. I mean, imagine being inside a steel tank in the middle of a summer heat wave. It's already an oven. Now you have to button up all the hatches and pull on a rubber gas mask.
It's hell on earth.
But Morrell realizes they have to keep moving. If they stop, they die. The fact that the CSA broke the taboo on gas warfare so early, it just signals that they are looking for a knockout blow. They don't care about international conventions. They're fighting for total conquest.
And this ruthlessness, it really filters down from the very top. Which brings us to the man behind it all, Jake Featherston.
The president of the CSA.
Yeah.
And his backstory is so essential here. He's a former artillery sergeant. He carries this massive chip on his shoulder about the aristocracy, the old guard.
We see him in his office, and he is just ecstatic. He's just received the first copy of his book over open sites.
Which is, for all intents and purposes, his manifesto.
It's his blueprint for the future.
And the excerpts we have are chilling. He writes about racial purity. He describes the state as a sort of family unit that has to be protected from outsiders. And he explicitly writes about his desire to pay back the United States for the humiliation of the last war and to completely destroy the black population inside the CSA.
And he's not hiding it. He's proud of it. He's holding this leather-bound copy like it's a newborn baby. It's almost a religious object to him.
It's his validation, and we see the propaganda machine working in real time. Saul Goldman, his director of communications, is right there with him, and Featherston orders the book to be translated into Spanish immediately.
Right, for the Mexican territories, so Sonora and Chihuahua.
It's a very shrewd political move. He knows those territories are unstable, so he wants to secure their loyalty by indoctrinating them with Freedom Party ideology. He's basically telling them, look, you might be Hispanic, but at least you aren't black, so you have a place in our new order.
It's inclusion through exclusion.
Divide and conquer. And the sources show us this is actually working. We get the perspective of Hipólito Rodriguez down in Sonora. He goes to a Freedom Party meeting.
Rodriguez is a great case study because he represents the common man who gets seduced by this system. He's a farmer. He has electricity now, which he credits to the party. The local party leader, a man named Quinn, speaks Spanish to the crowd, treats them with respect.
And Rodriguez buys the book.
He does. He buys over open sites.
Yep.
He reads the part where Featherston says he'd rather see blacks dead than Yankees. And Rodriguez just nods along. He thinks this is a man of his word.
It illustrates how seductive fascism can be. It offers you material improvements, like electricity and order, and gives you a target for all your hatred. It integrates you into the in-group by very clearly defining who the out-group is. Rodriguez feels included for the first time in his life, and that loyalty is incredibly dangerous.
But not everyone in the CSA is a true believer. We have Brigadier General Clarence Potter. He works in intelligence.
Potter is the cynic in the room. He actually hates Featherston personally. He was part of a plot against him years ago, but he's a professional. He serves the state. He knows the danger of waking the giant, as he puts it, but now that the war has started, his job is to win it.
And he's running this very complex spy network. They use commercial radio requests, like playing specific songs, such as blues, to send coded signals to agents deep inside U.S. cities like Columbus. It's really clever.
It's classic intelligence work. He's trying to get information on U.S. troop movements. But you should notice his attitude toward the propaganda chief, Goldman. Goldman wants to publicize the spy network, to brag to the public about how clever they are.
And Potter just shuts him down.
He does.
He says, if it's war, I want the United States to be sure we're a pack of goddamn idiots. I love that line.
It's great. It highlights the tension between the political need to show off and the military need for operational security. Potter is the adult in the room, trying to manage a war that was started by a fanatic. He knows arrogance gets you killed, and he sees a lot of arrogance in Richmond.
So while the spies are playing chess on land, out on the oceans, the navies are playing a very lethal game of hide-and-seek. Let's shift our focus to the Atlantic theater for a minute.
And the scope here, it's global. We have to remember this isn't just a localized civil war anymore. Churchill in Britain has declared war on the U.S. France is attacking Germany. Japan has recalled its ambassador. I mean, the dominoes are falling everywhere.
Wait, hold on a second. Churchill declaring war on the U.S.? That just feels so wrong, based on our history.
It really highlights the diverging timeline, doesn't it? In this world, the U.S. and Germany are allies, and the CSA and Britain are allies. So when the CSA attacks, Britain has to honor its alliance. The U.S. is completely isolated.
Okay, so we find ourselves on board the USS Remembrance, an aircraft carrier, with a sailor named Sam Carston.
And Carston's perspective is all about the vulnerability of these massive ships. The U.S. launches a raid on Charleston, South Carolina, but they get hit back and hit back hard. A bomb hits the flight deck of the Remembrance.
But there's a piece of new technology here that's changing naval warfare.
Wireless ranging, which, yeah, we would call it radar. It lets the ship see enemy planes and ships well beyond visual range. Karsten even notes that without Y-range, they'd be fighting blind.
So in this new kind of naval warfare, seeing the enemy first is everything.
It's the difference between life and death, and it seems to be the only real edge the U.S. has at this point.
But even with Y-range, the ocean is a terrifying place. We get the story of George Enos Jr. He's not in the Navy. He's a fisherman on a boat called the Sweet Sioux, just out there catching tuna.
This is one of the most heartbreaking parts of the source material. It just perfectly illustrates the concept of total war. A British fighter plane, remember, Britain is allied with the CSA Spots, this completely harmless fishing boat, and it strafes it.
They kill the cook.
Yeah.
Just for nothing. A man making coffee gets killed.
It's pure terror. It's sending a message. No one is safe. The ocean isn't a sanctuary. George Enos is trying to patch up his wounded crewmate, slipping on blood and fish guts. And he has this realization that his civilian life is over. He's a target now. It doesn't matter that he isn't a soldier. He's an American. And in this war, that's enough.
Total war really is the theme here. It's not just soldiers dying. It's everyone. Which brings us to the home fronts. Life inside the CSA is, well, it's a nightmare, unless you're someone like Hippolito Rodriguez.
That's right. If you're a Cincinnatus driver, a black man living in occupied Covington, Kentucky, life is a daily minefield. Covington is under CSA control.
And he has to carry a passbook. He's getting stopped by police constantly. Let me see your passbook, boy. It's just degrading and so dangerous.
It's an apartheid state on steroids, and Cincinnatus is constantly navigating this threat. He knows that one wrong step, one lost passbook, or just a guard having a bad day, it means he disappears into a camp. There's no due process.
He talks about the war plant work. There's this rumor going around that if you volunteer to work in the factories, you're safe. You get fed better.
But he's cynical about it. He suspects it's a trap, or at best, a temporary reprieve. He sees the news manipulation. Both sides are lying, jamming each other's radio signals. He's just trying to survive in this information vacuum where the only certainty is the threat of violence.
He's trying to parse the truth from the static.
But hope is very, very scarce.
And you contract his experience with someone like Ann Colleton. She's a wealthy plantation owner in South Carolina, a die-hard Freedom Party activist.
She is the embodiment of the oppressor. We see her at a rally in Charleston. She's fanatical. She wants revenge against her former slaves. She is just consumed by this hatred, completely bought into Featherston's vision.
And her end is just incredibly ironic. There's an air raid. Everyone is telling her to run to get to a shelter.
But she refuses. She refuses to leave the rally. She thinks she's untouchable. She thinks her political conviction is some kind of shield.
It's pure hubris. She thinks her willpower is stronger than high explosives.
And a U.S. bomber gets shot down, crashes right into the rally, and that's the end of Ann Colleton. It's so symbolic. The very war she wanted so badly literally crashes down on top of her. The violence she advocated for consumes her.
So, meanwhile, up north, in occupied Canada. Wait, we need to clarify that. Occupied Canada.
Yes. In this timeline, the United States has occupied Canada since the last war, basically to keep it from siding with the British Empire. And it's a harsh occupation. We meet Mary Pomeroy in Manitoba.
And she hates the U.S. troops. But it seems like she hates the Republic of Quebec troops even more.
Well, the Quebecois are acting as U.S. proxies, policing the English-speaking Canadians, and they're brutal. So it creates this triangle of hatred. Mary is dealing with the constant tension of being a civilian in occupied territory. She sees these notices on the walls. Summary execution for sabotage.
And she has this very tense standoff with the local postmaster. He sort of hints that he knows her father was a bomber in the last war.
Right. It just captures that small-town paranoia where your neighbors might turn you in to the occupiers just to save their own skin.
It shows that the home front is a battlefield, too. All trust just evaporates.
And then you have Dr. Leonard O'Doul. He's an American doctor who's been living in Quebec for years.
And the U.S. military just recruits him.
Recruits is a polite word for it. They basically draft him. They tell him, you're an American citizen. We have massive casualties, and we need you. It blurs all the lines of nationality. He's built a whole life in Quebec, but the blood of his birth country, it either calls him back or, well, it drags him back.
It just highlights how desperate the U.S. is for skilled people. They are scrambling.
They're scrambling, and the CSA is capitalizing on every single weakness. But we have to go to the darkest part of this story now. We have to talk about Camp Dependable.
Section 5.
Yeah. This is the heart of the horror. We've seen prison camps in history before, but what's happening under Featherston is a shift toward industrial genocide.
And we're introduced to Jefferson Pinkard. He's the commandant of Camp Dependable in Louisiana. And the way he talks about his job, it's chilling because it's so casual. so bureaucratic.
It is the banality of evil, to borrow Hannah Arendt's famous phrase. Pinkard isn't some ranting movie villain. He's complaining about logistics. He's complaining about overcrowding. He treats mass incarceration like it's a supply chain problem.
And his solution to the overcrowding problem is population reduction.
Yes. Taking groups of prisoners out to the swamps and shooting them. He even notes that the guards, they drink heavily to cope with what they're doing. Some of them commit suicide. It takes a toll on the human soul to do this kind of work.
But not on Pinkard.
Not on Pinkard. He says he's getting used to damn near anything. He has become completely, utterly desensitized to mass murder.
And it isn't just a local decision by one commandant. This is systemic. We have a meeting between Jake Featherston and his Attorney General, Ferdinand Koenig.
This meeting is absolutely pivotal. Koenig comes to him with a proposal. He calls it consolidation. He says, essentially, we have the camps and we have the war plants. Why not combine them?
Work them until they drop, then dispose of them.
Exactly. Koenig calls it killing two birds with one stone. They get the slave labor they need for the war effort, and they achieve their ideological goal of eliminating the black population. It creates a perfect death loop.
And Featherston, he laughs. He thinks it's a great joke.
That laughter is the most terrifying sound in the whole narrative. To him, the war against the USA and the war against his own black population are the same war. They are one and the same. It is a war of extermination. He tells Koenig, don't you ever forget that.
He sees the camps not as some side effect of the war.
No, not at all. He sees them as a primary goal of his presidency.
That is just incredibly heavy. It's hard to process the sheer scale of that malice. So taking all of this in the surprise attack, the new tech, the camps, where does that leave us? What's the state of play a few weeks into this war?
The situation is dire for the United States. Ohio is crumbling. The city of Chillicothe has fallen. Columbus is being threatened. The U.S. military is demoralized. We see them retreating. They're just totally outmatched by the barrels and the dive bombers.
Technologically and tactically, the CSA has the upper hand.
They prepared for this specific war while the U.S. was still preparing for the last one. That's the critical difference. The U.S. is reacting, the CSA is acting.
And the human cost is just mounting. Refugees are being strafed on the roads. Families are being separated. And that secret horror of the camps is ramping up to an industrial scale.
It's a very bleak picture. The surprise attack worked. The giant is awake, but it's bleeding, it's confused, and it's stumbling. The momentum is entirely with the South.
It really makes you think. We started this deep dive with Flora Blackford waking up to sirens, thinking it was just a drill. By the end, we have the president of the CSA laughing about industrial-scale genocide.
And it connects right back to that idea of rhetoric versus reality. Featherston wrote his book Over Open Sights. He laid it all out, plain as day, and people treated it as politics. They thought, oh, he's just riling up his base.
They thought the institutions would constrain him.
They did. But when the shooting started, the book became the playbook.
Right.
And that, I think, raises the provocative thought we should leave you with. In a polarized world, we often dismiss extreme rhetoric as just talk. We think the civilized rules will hold the darkness back. But what this deep dive shows us is how quickly those rules can just vanish.
At what point does the rhetoric inevitably turn into reality? When do we stop just listening to the tone and actually start believing the words people are saying?
That is the question, because once the sirens start wailing at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's usually too late to ask.
That wraps up our deep dive into settling accounts, return engagement, a brutal but fascinating look at a world gone horribly wrong. Thanks for listening.
Stay curious and keep questioning.